Uh, so my name's Hannah Dankbar. I'm the local food program manager for NC State Extension. I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm actually co-presenting today with Becky Bowen. So I will get our slides up while she introduces herself.
Great, thank you, Hannah. My name is Becky Bowen. I'm also with NC State Extension, and I'm a community and rural development specialist. And I also want to mention that we do have another member of our team on the call, Susan Jakes, who is the community and rural development lead at NC State Extension. And then we have a graduate student, Britt Davis, who has tangentially been involved with the Fork to Farmer film project, but she's very, very much involved with an outgrowth of that project, which I'll speak to in a few minutes. So Hannah, are we sharing? There we go.
Right, and I think I have this set up correctly. We are going to be showing some videos. So somebody's going to have to flag me if this doesn't work. So we're going to talk about the Fork to Farmer project today, and I'll let Becky start us off.
Great. So Hannah, could you go to the first slide, please? Great. So the Fork to Farmer project is a project. It was a grant-funded project by USDA Farmers Market Promotion Program project. It ran for 3 years, from 2017 to 2020, and we did get an extension because of COVID. So it's actually just winding up at the end of this month. And what the project is all about is it showcases the relationship between farm-to-table chefs and supply them with fresh local food. And the purpose of the project was to build consumer awareness about this very critical relationship between farmers and chefs, and also to use the celebrity of the chefs to sort of make people more aware of how critical our local farmers are. So what the project is it was all about the creation of 3 to 5 minute videos that would highlight the relationship between a chef and just one farmer that the chef would source from. And then we create this video, and then we would share the links to the video on social media, either through the NC State social media, but also whatever social media the restaurant might have. We also work with tourism development authorities. And then on one of our more recent films, now that restaurants are starting to open back up and have indoor dining, they're creating table tents and have a QR code that links to a particular video that highlights the relationship between that particular restaurant and the farmer who's sourcing them. Next slide, please. So the project involved a team of both specialists from community and rural development as well as tourism extension. So I mentioned that the purpose of the project was to increase public interest in sort of the critical role that farmers play, but also to create interest in farm experiences and direct product sales. So what we were wanting to do is to drive people from the restaurant to actually go visit the farmer on their farm and buy product directly from them, or if those farmers also offer some sort of agritourism experience that on-farm experience. The final purpose of the project was to increase farmer self-efficacy, and the way we sort of did that is, we got farmers to talk on the video, and you get to know the farmer. It increases their own self-confidence in this new digital world. And we found that the farmers that we have been engaged with have an increased level of self-efficacy. Next slide, please. So how we went about it is we work with our county extension offices first to identify who would be an appropriate chef and who would be a farmer. We're looking for more charismatic farmers that might be willing to be a part of a video. We actually did not use grant funding to cover the cost of the films. We would work with our local extension offices to apply to their local tourism development authority. We said that the range of the cost of the films was anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000. We would also, we sort of curated videographers and also the films that were created. And so we found that the quality sometimes varied at the beginning depending on the videographer that was selected, but we would always curate the films so that they would have sort of the same feel to them. And we created these video brand guidelines here to share with county extension offices so they would know exactly how it would work. Next slide, please. So what we've done is we've created in the 3-year period over 20 videos now, plus a documentary. We've generated over 13,000 views, and you can see them all listed on our YouTube channel. We've also have a lot of information on our portal related to how farmers and restaurants and tourism development authorities can engage with Extension to create these videos. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to show you a video now to demonstrate, sort of, what the purpose of the video is, and so you can get what we're driving at it. And each of the videos differs. It has its own unique message. This particular one is about sweet potato beer. So you're going to hear about that. Hannah?
Let me know if you can't hear this.
I was born and raised on this farm. That's all I ever wanted to do from the time I was old enough to know any different. I wanted to farm and worked on the farm. My name is Rob Glover. My farm name is Rob Glover Farming LLC. I'm a Nash County farmer, 3rd generation. Seeing my grandfather do it and my daddy do it made me want to continue to farm, and so far, so good. We grow tobacco, sweet potatoes, watermelon, cantaloupes, and a few other small vegetable crops throughout the summer. So we've been raising potatoes long as I've been involved in the farm. Sweet potatoes have been on this farm.
My name is Freddie Howell. Company's name is HS Howell Farms. I get a lot of requests, what does HS stand for? It's actually for my daughters, Hannah and Sarah, so we named the business after them. Had a corporate career, worked with Lowe's Home Improvement for 25 years and retired, and got in, going on probably about 6 years now, into the farming aspect of the business. We started off with ornamentals, and we did that for a couple years, and then Joey and Linda Bailey was into produce, and we were both vendors at the Nash County Farmers Market. And they decided to get out of the business and retire, and convinced me to take over the produce side of the business. We grow greenhouse tomatoes, and of course we do about 1/3 of an acre of strawberries, pick your own. And then of course we do the regular vegetables, summer vegetables.
I met Freddie from my neighbors, Joey and Linda Bailey. They were growing strawberries, and we started trading back and forth with wholesale vegetables and strawberries, and this just took off from there, and we're still trading today.
What we do together here, as far as we work in a co-op with each other, and Rob focuses on a lot of the row crops. He has the facility already set up, and instead of trying to duplicate things, we work better together with each other.
He's set up for retail sales and retail marketing, and I can kind of focus on growing and raising.
It gives us the ability to specialize more in what we do.
Koi Pond's Rocky Mountain's first craft brewery. I'm Joshua Parvin. I'm one of the co-owners of Koi Pond Brewing Company. We make anything from Kolsch all the way to stout, everything in between, Belgians, porters, saisons, triples, doubles, anything you can imagine. My wife and I go to the farmer's market, every other Saturday at least, it seems like. And we kept hearing about how good these peaches were, how good the strawberries were, how good all of that is. I went to H.S. Howell's booth there. You can tell they're hard workers. You can tell that they put a lot of effort into what they do, which is something I can respect. I mean, we do the same thing here. And when you see somebody put forth the effort to make their product available and make it good, then you want to support them. The first time, we bought the peaches from him and did our peach lotus. It's a peach saison, and lo and behold, they do sweet potatoes also. Well, the peaches were good, the sweet potatoes are going to be good. So I approached him about getting 40 pounds of sweet potatoes for our Downey's Harvest beer. Then I peel them to get the meat out and keep the skins, because the skins, we use those also in the mash. And we use some of the potato themselves in the mash, but we mash them up, put them in there and cook them for about an hour, and then we get the wort, and then we add it to the wort as well to get our beer. 2 weeks in the fermenter, then we put some bubbles on it and put it in a keg, and we have Downey's Harvest, sweet potato spiced ale. I was initially surprised at how many people come in here. Where do you get your peaches from? Where do you get your sweet potatoes? I'm like, 1 block over, farmer's market, Freddie and Rob.
Our relationship with Josh over at the Koi Pond at the Rocky Mountain Mills is beneficial for him and for us at the Nash County Farmers Market, because we're both in the community, and the consumers come to both of us and trust both of us to provide quality products that's safe and locally grown for them to consume.
Our customers are learning about something else. I didn't realize you could do this and get this at the farmer's market. I'll go check it out. And vice versa, when they go to the farmer's market and say, oh yeah, Koi Pond used this in their beer. That's awesome, I'll go try their beer.
Well, we've built a relationship with Josh where there's a trust there, and we're hoping to build on that, add on that more next year, and do even other products for him so he can advertise and promote more local items being put into his brew.
He's like, just ask me. If I don't have it, I might be able to grow it. If I have it, then you're welcome to experiment with it. And that just opens up a wide range of recipes that we can make new beer from.
So that was pre-pandemic, and then 2020 came. And I just want to point out, you'll notice that the chef is really talking in the prior video that you watched. The chef is really talking about how he goes to the farmer, and it's really all about building up the farmer. Then 2020 came, and we'll see how the farmers become the heroes of the story. Anna?
Yeah, so as Becky mentioned, 2020 threw quite a big wrench in our plans, but we had 2 videos already planned out. Over the winter of 2019 and 2020, we had done site visits and developed a narrative for 2 videos. And really, we're just waiting for the growing season to roll around so we could get some good footage. And with the pandemic and restaurants shutting down, we weren't sure, and also just not being sure if we could get a videographer on site. We weren't sure what was going to happen. But some of the things we were hearing about was that even though like farm and restaurant businesses either had to close down or pivot, the chefs and farmers continued to work together. And the 2 videos we're going to show that we filmed over this year are actually pretty powerful stories, and showed how these types of relationships were able to withstand the pretty big shock of the pandemic. So the first one I'm going to show is from Jackson County. We partnered with a regional food project called Empowering Mountain Food Systems. It's the 7 most western counties in North Carolina. We actually made a couple of different videos with them, but I'm just going to show you one right now. And I'll go ahead and get this started.
I'm Keela Worley, married into the farm back in 1984. We are a century farm. We went back to 1890 in the records. We have a grandson, Massey Ray Worley. He will be the 6th generation for this farm. My husband's family's always done it. They grew tobacco, and now we grow pigs. Pork breeds are mostly Yorkshire crosses. We are trying Berkshires right now. It's supposed to be a real good tight meat for marbling. And that's how we got into the meat part of it about 10 years ago.
My name is Perry Matthews. I'm the head chef here at Guadalupe Cafe. I've always been really impressed with how we really strive to maintain local farmers, local meats, local products, and I love that we get stuff straight off the vine and we get to put it right into our food.
Guadalupe buys local because we know these farmers and have connections with them already, and we know the quality of what they're bringing us and the freshness of what they're bringing us, but also this area has a really long agrarian tradition, and we want to be a part of continuing it. Worley Farm, I met at the Jackson County Farmers Market and started buying a little bit here and there, and they really quickly became one of those partners that could give me a larger supply and were just really easy to work with.
Anytime, even when I make special requests, it's like, can we get it from the closest areas to us where we are? Worley Farms brings us everything from bratwurst to Italian sausage to the sausage that we use in our regular brunch menu.
We buy a lot of pork roasts that we use in-house, and then we also have specialty cuts. We'll buy, pork chops and all these yummy link sausages and chorizo and bacon. And now with the coronavirus, we've been retailing a lot of their product because we have lots of customers that are coming in and along with getting to-go food are buying bacon, breakfast sausage, all kinds of stuff from the Worleys and other farms.
People was wanting to buy it, when we weren't there all the time. Well, that was another outlet for us and her where it'd be available for our regular customers and her customers.
My customers are making a point to buy eggs from local farms and buy their bacon from Worley through us. And it's because they really want to make sure that everybody pulls through this thing. And so it's helping me keep my employees, it's helping my farmers keep their farms, and it's helping me keep my restaurant. And so I'm beyond grateful. Yeah.
People like our products. I guess that's pretty special. They come back for more. So I'll take that as being a special farm.
So that video was a really good example of how two businesses were able to pivot and make adjustments while still continuing to work together. And this next one I'm going to show you is based in Wake County, which is where Raleigh is. And this is a really good example of how that farmer-chef relationship was actually used to support restaurant workers throughout the pandemic. So I'll just go ahead and start.
Hannah?
Hey, Hannah.
Oh,
Hannah.
yeah.
I'm
think
sorry,
we're
I
running
want to
out of
just
time.
break in and say your time is up, and we want to make sure to leave enough Q&A before the next person has to start at 10:15. So could you put the link to that specific video in the chat, and people can go there and watch it on their own time if you would?
Yeah, I can drop the link to a few specific videos as well as the playlist in the chat once we're done with questions.
Thanks. I'm sorry to jump in and interrupt. Are there any questions for Hannah and Becky?
Question. So with that development of the guide and working with the videographers, do you feel that this type of production requires having professional videographers, or is that something that can be incorporated into the wheelhouse of extension educators?
We've seen variety of quality in videography. And to be honest, actually the second video was done with someone who was hired by the university, but he is a professional videographer. He does it on behalf of the university. The stuff that, comes in that they are just not as, it's just not as polished. And, we have to work quite a bit more. I mean, we have had offers from agents to make videos, but those haven't turned out as well. So, I mean, you can just try it and see how they do it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious now in the age of where, everybody makes a video, right? With YouTube and TikTok and all of these things. At what level perfection is the enemy of the good for extension? And I'm not saying these aren't beautiful, because they are beautiful. It's just that it takes us so long to produce things, whereas content is flying off the shelves by other folks. And so, we're right now doing a whole bunch of virtual farm tours, and we're going to be struggling with that same question. I mean, we're doing it ourselves because we don't have this. It was kind of an add-on because of COVID. But again, like, at what level does everything need to be kind of this finished product versus some information that is valuable and really meets the end, but isn't as beautiful? I don't know where that line is. And so that's just what we're struggling with.
So, Britt, do you want to talk about the virtual farm tours that we're doing, which definitely are not as polished, but yeah, I mean, our project needed to be very polished, but we are doing other types of production too.
I turned my camera on because I thought you might ask me that. So we are working on virtual tours also. And I mean, that's something that we've had a really quick turnaround on it. We've used cell phones. We've gone out in the field. There's a couple people and students at the university that, they're either interested in it through sustainable tourism or whatever their background may be. They go out, they connect with the farmer or the grower. And I mean, it could happen in the matter of half a week over a few emails, as long as the entrepreneur or the farmer is interested in making it happen. So I think that the virtual experiences have the opportunity to have that like off the shelf, quick appeal that you're looking for. But I agree with Becky that the intimacy and the emotions and the feelings that are captured in these videos, it's worth the extra time. It really seems to captivate a lot of people, and they've been a good selling point in getting people to connect with the virtual tours.
Yeah, I'll just add, for extension programming, I think the purpose and the audience really determines what type of video and like how long you spend editing each one. So like if we're making a video that like we're trying to reach consumers with this intimate conversation between chefs and farmers and really give people a feel for what those types of businesses look like. So this like being a little bit more polished is a little bit appropriate. But if like we just want something to post on Facebook just to like get the word out about local foods, I think something quicker like what Britt just described is appropriate. So I think there's room for both within programming. You just have to think about what you want to get out of it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? We have time for one more. Nope. All right. Well, then.
Have one.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So giving other people time. How do you measure impact?
So obviously our ability to measure impacts was severely restricted once COVID hit. Right now we're just doing counts, number of views of the videos. That's how we're doing it. Ultimately what we had intended to do and were not as successful at was developing virtual tours or developing on-farm experiences, working directly with the farmers who are offering that we created web pages for each of the counties, showing where or on-farm experiences, agritourism experiences were available, and then trying to connect from the views of these videos to them, actually visiting the farm, and that we found that to be very difficult to keep track of. But yeah, so it's basically just the number of views at this point.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, we're gonna jump right in to our next presenter, but thank you very much, Hannah and Becky, for that great presentation. Those videos were fantastic. My mouth was certainly watering when I saw the first farmer talking about sweet potatoes and watermelons, because I'm coming to you from the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State, which is pretty much as far as you can get from where you are in North Carolina in the continental United States. And we can't grow watermelons and sweet potatoes here. We grow cold weather crops like cauliflower and other brassicas. So it was great to see that, that be reminded of that diversity. So thank you very much. Okay. I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Amanda Filia-Perez. Her presentation is entitled Entrepreneurial Risk Management for Small Business, and Amanda is coming to you from the University of Arkansas. So take it away, Amanda.
All right, thank you for the introduction. Thank you all for being here. We've got several team members joining today as well. So I'll go ahead and share screen. The title is about risk management, but we're going to talk about a program that we've been working on for several years now. It's the Share Grounds project. But first, we'll talk about how the Share Grounds is helping farms and food businesses with value-added food production, and then how we adapted in COVID. And then that's really dealing with risk management and then supporting value-added food production in the state. So I am with the University of Arkansas. I've been in this position for about 3.5 years as extension specialist and assistant professor, but joined our horticulture department just a year ago. All right, so for the Share Grounds, it is a shared use food manufacturing kitchen that we've worked to build out over the last couple of years with funding. So prior to dreaming up this concept for the Share Grounds, I had been working with groups around the state on local foods initiatives, many that were interested in supporting Food Hub and value-added food product development, and did a host of trainings and workshops and councils and committees and all of this to try to build that capacity in the state, some of which I've presented at NACDEP previously. So to really see the development of this kind of Food Hub, food innovation vision come to light, I pursued a local foods promotion program grant. We were awarded, and our portion of the grant started in 2019 for a 3-year term. We will be applying for a no-cost extension to do some of this work thanks to COVID. But the overall grant, we wrote for funding to modify county fairgrounds and turn them into food manufacturing facilities. And it worked. We did it despite COVID. And so we were able to work with 3 county fairgrounds to turn their county fair facilities into value-added food manufacturing facilities, and then hopefully down the road, food aggregation sites. And we really wanted to focus on this kind of rural urban linkage where we could create access to value-added food production and aggregation in these rural communities, but also link that to urban centers. So initially the concept, it kind of started just with me, but then quickly developed a really huge team of people to support this work. In Arkansas, we already had a food innovation center on our university campus, which is in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and it's known as the Arkansas Food Innovation Center. And I had been working with colleagues, Dr. Renee Threlfall and John Swinson, just to help them promote that work in the northwest part of the state. And then when we decided to write for funding, I called Renee and said, do you want to try to expand this work across Arkansas? She said, yes. John got on board. And then we began to build out our team over the last couple of years. We brought on Dr. Ruben Morwicki, who is a process authority who actually reviews recipes for safety, quality, other things as people dream up these value-added food businesses. And then I'll talk more about our interns, which is Jack and Ashlyn, in just a bit. But then within our extension service, I have built a local and regional and safe foods team over the last 3 years as well, which includes Angela Gardner, Julia Fryer, Rip Weaver, Dr. Natasha Curo, and our administrative assistant, Lisa Brown. And everyone from that team except for Julia is on today. And then we've worked very closely with our county agents because this work is happening in 3 counties outside of our main extension office in Little Rock. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. As part of the grant, we wrote to initially recruit 3 part-time kitchen managers to operate at each of the 3 sites, and I'll show you where those are located. But we've had a little bit of a lesson learned and change that's come about with the management structure. If you're interested in learning more about the Arkansas Food Innovation Center, you can go to the link that's provided here, and I think Natasha is going to drop that in the chat. And then if you want to learn more about all of our local foods programming, you can do that on our local foods page here, and she'll drop that in as well. And our Share Grounds page is featured there. So the overall goal of the project was really to increase access and consumption of local foods in Arkansas, and we wanted to do that by aggregating fresh produce, offering a aggregation and distribution facility for small diversified farms around the state, and then support value-added product development. Of course, all of this to support farms and food businesses, and then foster this rural-urban linkage where we're supporting regional food economies, and then improve access to underserved communities, because the counties that we put these facilities in are low resource, low income, and high food security issues. So this is a map of Arkansas, and the Share Grounds facilities, which are 3 food manufacturing facilities at Fairgrounds, are located in the counties that you see in red, which are Searcy, Woodruff, and Cleveland. And then Angela Gardner, who's on here today, worked to put this really interesting graphic together to talk about the population. Even though these are rural communities, the populations within about an hour or 2 drive or within about 75 miles of each of these sites. And so while we're in 3 rural communities, we have access to pretty large population centers. But you can see the populations for each of those 3 counties are pretty low. So this is the whole county. So there's only about 7,000 or 8,000 people in each of these 3 rural communities. So it's a really small population, but we're hoping to connect to urban centers. So just a few pictures of what we did in the community. So this is in Cleveland County. So each of these kitchens, and the reason that I decided to pursue Fairgrounds as the site for food innovation is because community fair facilities had kitchens, warehouses, all of the things that kind of are the components of a food hub. And one of the challenges that we had in doing our community outreach work was identifying infrastructure or building, because if you build this infrastructure, you're talking about millions of dollars. And, you know, at the time that we applied, we were kind of behind the curve in food hub innovation, and USDA had learned not to build in construction by that time. So we didn't have any construction money to do this. And so we couldn't get money to build facilities. So we had to think outside of the box. And when I was delivering other extension programming in county fairgrounds, I said, these facilities have all of the ingredients to make a food hub. Can I use them? And 3 of them said yes. And so what we did is minimally modify county fairgrounds to fit the requirements to be a food manufacturing facility. Now, our local foods promotion program grant, if you read the terms and conditions, does not allow for construction. So we had to find other monies to outfit these kitchens to be food manufacturing sites before we could implement our programming. And so we reached out to a nonprofit, Arkansas Community Foundation. We used rural services funds that are designed to support fairground modifications. And then we actually had donations from the communities as well. So we invested somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 per site to get them from where they started as kitchens to food manufacturing sites. This is the Searcy County kitchen. It was the one that expanded to be the largest kitchen. And I've just listed some of the things that we had to do in Arkansas under our regulations to be a food manufacturing facility. So even though the kitchens were already in place and they kind of look similar to what the after picture looks like, we had to do certain things to get that food manufacturing permit. So if you take a look at the types of changes that we made here, washable walls, we had to have the electrical outlets protected, stainless steel tables and sinks, a 3-compartment sink, to follow the food safety, a dedicated mop sink, so you're not washing in the main sink, floor drains, washable floors, hand washing stations, protected lighting so you don't get physical debris during production activities, and then just an area to store cleaning chemicals and things like that. And then this is our third kitchen, where across all 3 sites, if you think about changing a facility from just a regular kitchen to a food manufacturing facility, and you do it for $15,000 to $25,000, a lot of people have said to me, I'm scratching my head, how did you make this happen? Well, in rural communities, a lot of people will show up and do work, and they did that for us. The county fair board presidents, community partners came in and actually did some of the construction. So while you see the before and after happening, the fair board president of the 3-county fair in Woodruff County actually put in this floor drain and worked on a lot of the plumbing himself. And so if we estimated that value, it would probably be about another $10,000 to $15,000 per site for the work. All right, so that's how we got the kitchens going. And we're ready to open. And so we started doing outreach in December of 2019 to drum up a business for these 3 sites. We hosted an in-person workshop December 7th of 2019. We attracted about 27 clients in person to that class that were interested in getting their food businesses off the ground. You can see the topics that we covered throughout the day, the list of speakers. And then over the first year of the project, our team also worked to develop our client intake process, the legal process, the paperwork, the SOPs, all of that. And Angela Gardner, who's on today, really led this initiative and then dreamed up how to deliver this information on our website really easily. And she came up with this kind of tile system where people go to our page and they learn about how to get their food business off the ground using our share grounds. And you can visit our share grounds page there. So one of our first clients that we worked with is Lacey's Kitchen, who was interested in making granola. And she met with our kitchen manager at the time, Ryan, who's pictured here, to walk through the steps of recipe development, safety, packaging, would she make any money because of the ingredients, all of that stuff. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic, she is an essential worker, works in the healthcare field. Her husband is an African-American police officer, and both of them have had a lot going on this past year, and she has not moved forward with developing her business, understandably. So what we did, we were planning. We had dates selected right before the pandemic hit. We had 3 grand openings scheduled in March. We were ready to launch, and boom, we got the call that we were staying home for COVID. So we had to pivot and go virtual. And we were, going to just wait a few months, just like I think everybody. As a public health, I'm trained in public health. I knew that it wasn't going to be a few months, but I wanted to believe that it wasn't going to be a whole year and a half. But the science says it was going to be a year and a half, and I knew that, and I told my team that. And so we decided to revamp what we were going to do and to determine if we could do it virtually. Before the pandemic hit, people were a little bit hesitant. They were interested in getting training, interested in talking about their recipes. They weren't really interested in going to full production yet. So we had started toying with writing a Southern Risk Management grant to offer them more hands-on support. So, hand holding all the way from concept to market. And so we had started working on writing for a Southern Risk Management grant to do just that, and then to bring some additional expertise to the team through food science interns in our university food science program. And then COVID hit, and we decided, we've got the application in, and then fortunately we were awarded because we needed this to make the COVID phase successful. And so our interns had planned to go out and be in person and walk food businesses through the process in person. So our goal was, as part of this grant, because we were awarded a Southern Risk Management grant, was to assist 15 clients with our intern support to create a product, understand the safety requirements for developing a value-added food product, understand what the regulations were around that, and then if they could actually make any money off of that. So for our interns, we had interns. They were paid hourly as part of the grant. They worked about 240 hours over the last year. Each of them had 5 to 8 clients. Our kitchen managers, who were housed at each of the sites, but now working remotely because we couldn't be in the kitchens, met virtually with clients and with the interns. And then the interns who were on campus with our food scientists and our process authority would talk about recipes and figure out if the recipe was possible. And then we tracked all of that engagement with the clients. And then our interns completed weekly progress reports. And then at the end gave a presentation about their experience. So while we're plugging along, COVID is well underway, we pivot, we decide to do a virtual webinar. And we put out this webinar in May. And started attracting clients to our program, and clients would have to apply to have this free support to develop a food product from concept to market. And so we selected 5 clients for each of the 3 sites to work with initially. And then we offered this one-on-one technical assistance, mostly virtually. And then we waived our fee structure, which is on our website, and we can talk about, I don't have time to talk about that today, but that is available on our website. So what we did is, these are the clients that we initially started with and some of the products that they developed and the location and the intern that were part of the Southern Risk Management grant. But you can see that the variety of products that people were interested in making. One that was most interesting was taking kind of the SCOBY from the fermented kind of tea product and turning that piece into snacks. Now, if you study the food science and the product development behind that and everything, we couldn't get the probiotic factor to kind of work out, but they're still doing research on that. There's lots of like shelf stable things like granola, teas, seasonings. We had a company that was interested in taking Arkansas elderberries. They have an elderberry farm, and turning that into gummies like the vitamins you see in the grocery stores. We haven't been able to get that product concept to not produce mold yet. So we're really working through the development of all of this. So outside of that program, we have had a number of clients that have reached out to us that were not a part of this initial 15 clients. And these are some of the types of products that they've been working on. So to date, we worked on 27, and actually I think it's higher than this, but at the time that I put this together originally, 27 food products. And some of them, or 27 food businesses, some of them have more than one product. So here's just a few pictures from what's happened. So we did get permission about halfway through the year to work with clients individually, one at a time, one a day in the kitchens with the COVID policy. And so we wore masks, our kitchen managers met with them. We were able to work through this jerky seasoning, granola, developing this herbal syrup, jelly, which is really tasty. So what are some of the takeaways from our program? Well, one, we help support the development of an Arkansas-based macaroon business, which is delicious. We also helped establish a virtual client intake process, which we had no idea when we first started this that would even happen. So we were able to walk clients through the legal, the regulatory, the safety, the quality, the cost, the supply, all of that stuff in a Zoom setting, which we probably wouldn't have dreamed up if COVID hadn't have happened. We would have gone to be personal and meet with them and go through all of that. So that helped us save on our travel budget. These places are not close to where we all live, so it saved our time. It also offered workforce training for our food science interns, and both of them got really great jobs after participating in our program with food businesses around the country. So we now have 2 more interns that are interested because they're wanting to get good jobs too. And so we have a workforce training program as part of this as well. And then it helped us establish this virtual learning platform that we will eventually turn into a series of courses. So if I have time, I'm going to share the video here, but I'll just talk a little bit.
Amanda, I'm sorry. I don't think that there is time for that. The next presenter needs to start in 4 minutes. So I think here would be a good time to pause and ask if there's any questions. And also if you could just put the link in the link to the video, that would be great. People can go and check it out on their own time.
Okay. And just real quick, we did do a virtual series of workshops for those clients, and those are available on our website as well. And we had about 1,700 views, not counting the actual people that enrolled in the workshop. So this is just from our YouTube page, about 1,700 views so far. So thank you for giving us a chance to talk about things, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Amanda. What a cool project. Thanks to you and all your team. Are there any questions? I have a question, if I may. I guess I'm can jump in. We're in the process of designing a kitchen also. And I'm wondering if you can recommend, it's just so interesting, I know so many of us around the country are going through the same sort of learning process. I'm wondering if you can recommend any good communities of practice or resources for the design of such a facility. Like, what kind of resources did you tap into on that?
So I have been working in the local food space for about 12 years. So I've attended the National Good Food Network Food Hub stuff. I've attended all of the NACDEP sessions of people talking about this. There is a Angela, if you're still on, I can't think of the name of it, that we use the resource for all the time, that is it the NIC, National Innovation, I think it's, but Angela can drop that in the chat. That's a good resource. There was a shared use kitchen program that was a pre-conference workshop at NACDEP that was put on a couple of NACDEPs ago. That was a really good resource. So those are all things that have kind of helped drive us. And then I've just done a lot of needs assessment work within our state. I think that's important to figure out. I was going to share just a couple of lessons learned here, and these might be helpful. And I'd be happy to talk to you about where things started and where they've ended up in Arkansas in regards to this. But I will just say, one of the things, and this is like under this Food Hub Innovation Center, like if you're planning to do this, these are things you need to know. Like, you need to have the knowledge infrastructure, all the programming, before you go build the facilities and put the physical infrastructure in place, because that's what took us the longest to do. You also need to know the laws, the food manufacturing requirements for a facility in your state, and then broadband and electric infrastructure. So you cannot put in certain equipment in these counties because they don't have 3-phase electric. These are just things we didn't even think about. And then the internet's wonky in these communities. And then another piece of the project was aggregation. And we haven't been able to do that because farmers with COVID were just like, I'm barely functioning. Don't ask me to do anything else right now. And then outreach. You really need a strong communications team. Our extension communications team is incredible, but you need someone dedicated to find people to use your facilities. And we're just now starting to do that.
Thank you. That's great. One last question, one quick question. Does anyone have another question for Amanda or her team? All right. Well, geez, thank you so much. That was just amazing. That was so cool to see. Thank you so much for sharing that project. And now we're going to jump right into our next presenter. This is Colette DePhelps from the University of Idaho, presenting on a local cornucopia, the economic contributions of the Moscow, Idaho farmers market.
Thank you. Thank you, Clea. So I'm presenting today with my colleague, Steve Peterson, who we are both with the University of Idaho. I'm with University of Idaho Extension. I'm an area educator in community food systems. I primarily serve the northern 10 counties of Idaho. And Steve is with our University of Idaho College of Business and Economics, and he is our go-to person for our state for looking at economic impact and economic contribution studies. So what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to provide a brief introduction to the Moscow Farmers Market and our community of Moscow, Idaho. And then we're going to jump in and talk about how we estimated the economic contribution of the Moscow Farmers Market to our community. And so I wanted to make a distinction to start out between what an economic contribution assessment is and an economic impact assessment, because often we use those terms interchangeably. And when you look at the literature and our economic analysis that are looking at contributions or impacts, they are really not interchangeable terms. So a contribution is looking at the gross current contribution of an entity to the economy. So it's looking really at what is something doing currently. And so that could be a business, or in this case, the farmer's market. An economic impact assessment is looking at something in the future. So if you're looking to change a business or establish a business, what would the potential impact economically of those changes be? So what we're talking about today is the actual contribution of the Moscow Farmers Market to our local and state economy in 2018. So I'll talk about how we used a technique called rapid farmers market assessment to gather some of the data, and then I will hand it over to Steve, who is going to talk about our actual analysis that he did using IMPLAN and some of the contributions that we see our market makes to our community. And then we'll be happy to answer questions. So our Moscow Farmers Market is really a brand and identity for our community. It was established 45 years ago. So at the time of our study, it was 43 years old. And it was actually started by our retail food co-op, the Moscow Food Co-op. But after a year of operations, it switched into being managed by our city. And now it is part of the Community Events Division. The market is overseen by a mayor-appointed Farmers Market Commission. I am the extension educator and University of Idaho rep to that commission. The commission is made up of representatives of market vendors, community members at large, a representative from extension, and the director of our Moscow Chamber of Commerce. And so this is a quasi-governmental entity that provides recommendations that go to the mayor and city council around policies that govern the market. And the market really is a signature event for our city. It happens every Saturday, May through October on Main Street in the heart of downtown. And one of the things that we wanted to look at with this contribution study was the return on investment of what the city pays in terms of market management and how that relates to vendor fees, because you can imagine this is a big discussion within the commission is what is the value of having the market, of the city supporting the market, and then how much of the fees for vendors should essentially recoup the costs or contribute to the costs of managing the market. So Our city is a rural community. It is home to University of Idaho's main residential campus, or University of Idaho, which is Idaho's main residential campus, and we are the land grant school for the state. We don't have, though, any other major tourist destination. We don't have a lake or wilderness area to attract visitor spending. Our town in 2018 was just a little over 25,000 people. It's definitely the seat of our county, which is a small county of 40,000 people approximately. Our downtown is a little bit unique in that it's less than 2 miles from the Washington-Idaho state line. And just about 8 miles away to the west in Washington is Washington State University, which is the land grant university for the state of Washington. So that town is about 33,000, including the students. After that, you actually have to drive 20 or 35 miles to the south to get to more of a larger metropolitan center, which for us is about 55 to 60,000 people in the city of Lewiston. So with us, we are a pretty rural city, but our downtown is amazingly vibrant. It's just less than half a mile from the University of Idaho campus. We are trying to always create that campus downtown relationship, build on that to bring students downtown. We do have ample parking, though that is definitely debated by some, and how we use parking, of course, is a challenge in terms of different priorities in our city. Our downtown storefronts have very few vacancies and are walkable from our 3-by-5-mile town. In 2018, at the time of this study, there were approximately 344 firms in the downtown corridor, which extends about 3 to 4 blocks wide and about 6 blocks long, and had approximately 3,600 workers. So in estimating the economic contributions of the market, we pulled together information from rapid market assessments, and I'll talk to you about that methodology, from a vendor survey, which were vendors at the market, talking about what their sales were at the market, interviews with downtown businesses, and then using in-plan modeling. So rapid market assessments, these are a tool that were developed out of Oregon State University by Larry Lev, Gary Stevenson, and Linda Brewer. And we've been using them in Moscow since the mid-2000s to really look at a lot of different factors around our markets. They comprise of 3 different methodologies. It is a participatory method, so we identify with the market what questions we're going to ask on dot poster surveys for this particular assessment, because we wanted to understand spending inside and outside the market, which is critical to do the in-plan modeling. Our questions focus on where people were from, why they came to the market, how much they anticipated spending in the market that day, and how much they anticipated spending outside of the market. We also did customer counts, where you estimate the number of adults and from that determine the number of shopping groups in the market. And we actually also looked at children in the market just as an interest point during our RMA process. So we had a group of community members that worked with us on putting together the actual RMA and conducting it. So customer counts, again, we have a pretty small community, and we found that in the summer in 2018, we did 3 different customer counts. We estimated that over 10,000 adults attended our market on a weekly average. And when we started looking at children, we were looking at upwards of 1,500 children that attend our market. So this is an incredibly vibrant farmers market that attracts a lot of people into a community that doesn't have another major tourism feature. Looking at where adult shoppers live is very important, because we wanted to look at the contributions of the market to Latah County. So we needed to understand approximately how many of our shoppers are from outside Latah County. So that's why we asked the question about where shoppers live. These are questions that are put on dot posters. We have volunteers asking people, could you take a minute to help out the market? And as you can look up here from the number of people that responded, we had upwards of 10% of adult shoppers in the market. So our estimated participation was over 10,000. And so we had over 1,000 adults, 1 per household, complete our dot posters. So we had a really great participation. And as you can see, almost half of the people that come to our farmers market are from outside of Latah County, and they are bringing new money into Latah County. So we ask people why they come to the market. The black bars are our morning. So we divided our data between those that come early morning. Gray are those that come in the latter half of the market. And then the yellow is the average. So you can see that most people come because of our agricultural products. That shifts a little bit as we get later in the market to people coming to socialize and to enjoy music. Our market several years ago moved from a parking lot, a side parking lot on our downtown, to our main street, and that has created exponential market growth. We also asked how much people would spend at the market today. So this is an estimation. And then we calculated what the average was per shopping group. And a shopping group are people that are spending out of one wallet. So you can think of that potentially 2 people per household, 2 adults per household, which is kind of the low estimate, especially in our community for a shopping group, because we do have so many students that come and that are actually shopping one person out of a wallet. So if we estimate on the very conservative side of spending, we're saying 2 people per shopping group. On a less conservative side, we're saying 1.6 per shopping group, which might be a little bit higher. However, in our market, it's much more likely that we are seeing more around 1.6 people per shopping group. So our estimated market sales at the July time that we did our survey were between 859,000 up to 147,000. And then in September, we were looking more at 104 to 131,000. And what's really interesting is in the summer, the majority of students leave our town. And so the September number is when the students had returned. This July number, we did not have students. We also picked to do these studies on market days where we didn't have an event like an RV convention that would bring people outside of town to inflate those numbers. So we were trying to be more conservative about the number of people that came to the market and were spending on the market on an average market day. So we calculated that on average between $23 and $20 was what somebody was spending in the market per household or per shopping group. And then we also asked them how much they anticipated spending outside of the market. And this is really important because we often talk about markets being a draw for other businesses. And in our case, we say it is pretty amazing that our downtown corridor has the visibility of 5,000 out-of-town shoppers approximately every week during the market season. That's really huge for a small community to have that many people come down and see those businesses. We estimated that in that downtown corridor in July, the average amount spent per shopping group in those businesses downtown was $13.05. In September 8th, we asked a broader question about spending in Moscow as a whole, recognizing that so many people were coming from out of town into our community, and we estimated approximately $17.05 was the average amount spent in Moscow per shopping group. And then in these bar graphs, you see the estimate total for that day of shoppers spending outside the market. So between 65 to 82,000 in July and between 87 to 109,000 in September. I will show at the end of the presentation a link to a published paper where you can kind of delve into our methodology and the numbers that I went over really quickly. At this point, I want to transition over to inviting Steve to present and to talk about how he actually used the data from the RMA, the vendor survey, and the business interviews to calculate the economic contributions of the Moscow Farmers Market. So Steve?
Steve, I'm just going to jump in really quick and remind you that there's about 5 minutes or so left of the session. I'm happy to keep it going after that time for any questions and answers. You're on mute.
Thank you very much. Colette, could you move to the slide that rapid market growth. There we go. And I'll start here in the interest of time. So I'm a regional economist here in Moscow, and I was approached by stakeholders from the Moscow farmers market to conduct a contribution study to estimate the tangible economic contributions of the market to the community as those that we can measure in terms of jobs, taxes, and income to the community. And I was able to team up with Colette and the great data that she collected in the rapid market assessment to conduct, I think, a fairly robust contribution analysis of the Moscow's farmers market. And I want to point out that the market has been collecting data for well over 20 years. And so there's a robust historical set of data that goes all the way back, I think, an important part of this story. So when we calculate this on an annual basis, we estimate there's about 266,000 visitors to the market. This was as of 2018, not counting the COVID world we're just emerging from now. But we expect these numbers to return. It's a 217% cumulative increase and an 8% average annual growth rate. Now, these are visits, not individual visitors, but the money all spends the same in terms of the contribution assessment. We estimate that about half of all of the eating and drinking and shopping customers come from out of the region, and that represents new money to the regional economy. And when you conduct a contribution study, what drives it is new money coming into the economy or money that would have leaked out. We call that import substitution in the absence of the activity. Most of the impacts that we measured here were from out of region visitors. We're a border community. 1/3 of our economy is based on people who visit the community or who work outside of the community and live in Moscow. So next slide. This is a summary of our economic contributions. And again, most of the drivers of this is new money to the regional economy. And it's pretty substantial. We estimate in the first category here, this was from vendor surveys that are conducted by the market annually. And they estimate the revenues and by product type. And we estimate there's about 22 jobs, 500,000 in salaries, and about 1.3 million in output. Then on top, so that is a measure of expenditures and revenues in the market. And then we also, through the rapid market assessment, Colette estimated what the spending was on visitors to the market. And there was a fairly wide differential between the two. And one of the plausible explanations is there's underreporting on the part of the vendors for a lot of reasons: privacy, record keeping, perhaps taxes. And so we created kind of a high and a low estimate using both surveys. So number 2 is a net differential and adds 13 jobs, about 300,000 in wages and salaries, and about 734,000 in output. Then markets or incubators. That's one of the key attributes of the Moscow farmers market, is role as an incubator. We estimate there's probably 20 firms that have spun out of the market into brick and mortar establishments, some of them wildly successful. So it's an inexpensive way for vendors to experiment with new products, to test the market in their branding. And then we also have established firms that also have a market presence, and as they're trying to experiment with new products, and also try to create a brand in the advertising following. So they estimate about 48 jobs, about 1 million in wages and salaries, and about 2.6 million in output. And then we also estimated through the rapid market assessment the spending that people were doing in the community outside of the market region, or outside of the downtown region, I should say. And we estimate there's about 30 jobs, about 600,000 in wages and salaries, and about 1.8 million in output. So the total is about 113 jobs, about 2.4 million in wages and salaries, and about 6.5 million in output. And they also bring in tax revenue, property tax revenue, about 140,000, state taxes of about 266,000. Next slide. Thank you. So these are the tangible benefits. And what we find is that the market pays for itself. It does more than that. And one of the things you've got to get stakeholders to understand is you've got to look at the total contributions of the market in your economy. There's people with very narrow pencils sometimes saying, well, you have a small operating loss, which our market does. And you need to do something about that. Well, not necessarily, given the contributions that it makes to the entire community economy and to the branding that this market does for Moscow. So we actually are able to estimate those tax contributions out of our model, and we find that there's actually a net surplus of 68,000, about 68,000 a year. So I think that's one of the takeaways from the study as well. One final note with this is the Moscow Farmers Market is the signature community of the town, and that's saying something in a university town. When people think of Moscow, they think of this event and have for a decade, and that has contributed to this massive success of this market. And the indirect, intangible stuff we weren't able to, we didn't directly estimate. But again, Moscow is, 1/3 of our entire economy comes from visitors from outside the region or people who live here and work elsewhere. And the market draws people to Moscow and makes it a very vibrant place. And one final note is that we don't have a single vacancy downtown. I can't find one. We have one of the most vibrant downtowns. Any of the surrounding communities here, in many cases, they have boarded up, spaces they haven't been able to rent forever, and we don't have that problem. We actually have new construction and building downtown, and I think the farmers market has contributed to that. And with that, I'll turn it back to Colette.
Thanks, Colette. We're out of time, so if you wouldn't mind wrapping it up, and anybody can stick around and take questions.
Great. So I just put up this last slide where you can see you can access the full research paper that describes our methodology in detail, and then also references the Rapid Market Assessment Guide put out by Oregon State University so that folks can better understand how to use rapid market assessments in their farmers market. I do see that we have a question from Hannah about how were the dollars spent, the numbers calculated. So in our dot poster, we had response categories asking people how much they spent at the anticipated spending at the market that day. And so they were 0, 5, 10, 20, 30, and 40 or above, I believe is what they were. And using that methodology, which is described in the publication by Oregon State University, and the number of people who completed that DOT survey, from that, we get an estimated amount spent per shopping group. So we're looking at that total dollars people said that they spent, the number of people who completed the survey. We get an average per shopping group, and that's back where I said we need to look at whether the shopping group is 2 people or 1.6, what makes sense for your market. And then we multiply that average by the estimated number of people, the adult shopping groups in the market that day. So it's cumulatively building on itself, these different pieces of information, which is laid out really clearly in our paper. And I know it's quite a bit to think through in a verbal presentation.
Thank you, Colette and Stephen. This session time is up, so obviously you're free to go and move on to the next ones. But again, I'll just keep it running if there's more questions for Stephen and Colette. Looks like folks are signing off. So thanks everyone for participating in this session. Thanks to all our presenters for some really great and inspiring presentations. And enjoy the rest of the conference.